Hey everyone, and welcome to the Uncorked Corner podcast, where we cover the full spread of food and beverage industry topics. My name is Bianca, PR and marketing professional by day and food and wine connoisseur by night.
And my name is Nick, an accountant with a passion for barbecue, beer, and whiskey. Today we welcome Michael Fairbrother and Berniece Berg from Moonlight Meadery.
In this episode, we discuss the many variations of mead, how their Moonlight has grown from a local favorite to an internationally recognized brand, and some tips for cooking with this unique beverage.
If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to us. With that said, let's welcome Moonlight to the show.
Welcome everyone. Today we are so excited to have Michael and Berniece from Moonlight Meadery. We want to start off by having you guys both introduce yourselves and give us some background on how Moonlight Meadery came to be.
So I started homebrewing back in May of 1995, and I fell in love with the art of fermentation. Around June of that year, I got to try my first mead, and it's been love ever since. And in 2010, I started Moonlight Meadery. My wife joined me shortly after in becoming my co-founder of the company and helping to get us to where we've gotten to. But in the last 10 years, we've won medals at every single international mead competition we've entered. And we've sold almost 2 million bottles of mead in our cider in the past 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
I'm Berniece Berg, and I'm VP of Sales and Marketing for Moonlight Meadery. And when we started this company, we literally started in our garage. And Michael said to me, honey, I'm going to make it and you're going to have to sell it. Otherwise, we're going to starve. And so we set upon this journey, and happy to say that 10 years in, I think we've done a pretty good job.
That's great. Now, what specifically about mead really struck a chord with you and made you want to focus on that?
So I was a beekeeper when I was a teenager. Not a lot of hives, but I had a few hives through middle school, high school, up into college. So I always really liked the flavor of honey. And what's unique about mead, other than any other fermented beverage, is it's not actually made from an agricultural product that you grow. It's made from the pollen and the bees and the nectar from the flowers and the bees regurgitating that to make honey. So it's a different flavor. And while I still love beer, and we've got Hidden Moon Brewing Company up and online now as well, there's a lot of really, really, really good breweries in this world. And 10 years ago, there were maybe a few meaderies in the world, and let alone a few really, really good ones. And I thought I could change that. And so, my goal, my mission was to bring this ultra premium honey-based alcohol to the market. And so the major difference is, instead of fermenting malt to make beer, or grapes to make wine, or apples to make cider, we ferment honey to make mead. And there are many, many different types of meads. My name is on the front cover of the BJCP Mead Style Guidelines book. Most of our meads are listed as the de facto standard to which all meads are judged against. And I've really put passion first. I try to focus on how do you make the absolute best possible mead, bar none, and really live my life by that.
When we first started, most people didn't know what mead was. In our own tasting rooms, when customers came in, probably 90% of people had never tried mead or didn't know what a mead was. Today, it's different. And when we set out and went to market, we said we're going to go mainstream. Most meaderies stuck to very niche markets, and everybody told us we were crazy. And today, you can go into major markets and they actually have a mead section, which was unheard of. So we consider that a success.
Absolutely. And speaking of success, you guys had a recent 2020 award, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
We've had a few. So we were chosen as the top 15th most influential honey beverage in the world by the National Honey Board for our Kurtz apple pie. We just recently took grand champion at the international San Diego International Beer Festival for mead and cider. And I think out of 9 or so entries that we had, we took home 8 medals or something to that effect. So, well, we didn't take home more medals than we entered, but it doesn't matter. There's a lot.
I mean, that has to feel so good, especially where it is your passion, you know, and I think it really proves that putting passion first makes a huge difference. And speaking of, you mentioned that mead that won. Can you tell us about some of the other styles that you have and their different characteristics?
Sure. So mead ranges from dry to sweet, and semi-sweet. You can make them sessionable, like the what she said, nice light 6.5% raspberry mead, really nice jammy flavor to it. Kind of tastes like a honey raspberry seltzer, in my opinion, but with a lot of raspberry. Some of our meads, our most famous ones are like Embrace, which is a black currant, really tart, almost like a big Cabernet. You've got Desire, which is a black currant, blueberry black cherry. That's the one I started the company with. So it has a lot of depth of character, almost like a really beautiful dessert wine or port. Kurtz apple pie tastes like liquid apple pie in a glass. I mean, there's nothing we've made more that we've sold more of than our apple pie mead. And this time of year, it's absolutely a winner. One of my personal favorites is Smitten, which is my peach mead. I like that one so much. We took it with us to Belgium last summer, or 2 summers ago now, when we were pouring at Oosteleden Beer Festival in Belgium. And so that I mean, I like choices. I like diversity. I like things to be different. I want to tease my taste buds, right? So for what I do, I'm trying to think of flavors as almost like an art form. And how do I tease out that flavor to get exactly what I want to get? And, a lot of my friends and fans online have always kind of joked and razzed me about trying to make a pumpkin mead. And I say, no, because I don't want to taste a pumpkin mead, or a watermelon mead. And I say, no. I said, I can tell you how to make it, but that's not what I want. So I'm not going to make something I don't want. Now, I have gone crazy at times and made some really interesting meads because I've tried things that tasted really bizarre. Like I had a cucumber lime mead a few years back that I replicated. Worked with a home brewer who created the recipe and made that for a National Homebrewers convention where I was doing a talk. But usually, so sometimes there's one-offs. Like we made monkey bread, which is a banana, cinnamon, vanilla maple mead that tastes like banana bread. I mean, it's spot on. It's almost, you can almost taste nuts in the flavor. But yeah, so I mean, flavor to me is just, I keep toying with the idea someday I want to make a salsa style mead with tomatoes and a little cilantro and stuff, but I haven't really gotten that crazy yet.
He has one motto. He says, I'm going to make what I like. If nobody else likes it, there's more enough for me.
There you go. Yeah, you got to make what you want to drink. Now, are there any particular kind of clear-cut styles? So I know one, for example, Sizer is one that I've seen. I believe that's honey apple, right? So how many of those? I'm sure there's tons, just like with wine too, but what kind of different popular clear-cut styles are there in meads?
Yeah, so there's 4 categories currently that are like bucket holders. So you have traditional, so that's like any type of honey with water, right? And the federal government gets in the way of allowing mead makers to call what we do making mead, because in their legal term, mead is a wine made from honey that can only be up to 14% alcohol. And you can put up to a pound of hops in it and some other crazy stuff. Now, in the grand world of everybody else in the world, mead is anything that has a primarily fermentable source from honey. So a Sizer is a melomel, so a fruit mead, but a particular fruit, which is apple. So you can have a Pyment, which is a great mead, and there are several other subvariants of that. You can have a Methaglen, which is a mead made with spices. So like ginger or cinnamon or vanilla or whatever kind of spicing you might like. And then you can make, well, they've really kind of given up on trying to find names, but it's called open category, which is a combination of one or more of the aforementioned. So Kurt's apple pie, for example, would be a sizer, but sizer can't have spices, so it doesn't fit there. So then it's not a metheglin because it's got fruit in it. So then it falls into this open category, which is a fruit and spice mead.
And that one was delicious too. I remember that. And I believe the one that we have is also bourbon barrel aged, which gave it a really nice, aftertaste characteristic. And I'm a big whiskey guy. So that one was definitely a favorite of ours when we were drinking it. I'm drinking Desire now, which, just like you said earlier, dessert wine is the first thing that hit my head, like a nice port or like a really, heavier, really sweeter sort of wine, but it's got that sort of thicker kind of viscosity that meads tend to have. And the raspberry one's delicious too. And this one's nothing, I've never had anything similar to this. And you call this one a session mead. So can you talk to us about what a session mead is and how you make this and make it so much different than the other two?
Sure. So most of the meads that we make are around 14% alcohol, because that level of alcohol helps keep the mead from re-fermenting in the bottle and gives it a real nice balance. So there's three things that control the perception of sweetness. There's the actual sweetness, there's the pH, and then the alcohol level. So for me as a mead maker, what I'm trying to do is create balance, right? Create that perception of, oh my God, this all ties together perfectly. So sessionable or lower in alcohol, like less than 7, doesn't technically fit the wine category definition of wine anymore, right? So it's so complicated the way the government regulates terms. So a beverage is exclusive of wine. So wine's not a beverage, right? Beer and cider are beverages. The Raz, what she said, is a beverage. So sessionable mead is almost like a wine, I guess is the right way to call it. So it's like I don't want to say a wine cooler, but a mead.
It's lighter in alcohol.
It's basically we add more water instead of adding more sugar, or sugar being honey or fruit. So my style of making that, I think, is fairly different than most of the other commercial mead makers in the world. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but I like to keep in control the body and the characteristics of what the fermentation does for me when it's fermenting at, like, say, a 14% alcohol level, and get it into that same, so it shouldn't taste watery, right? So as you taste that ras, what she said, you still probably get the hang time of the flavor and the long lasting effect of that flavor. And that's really what I'm trying to go for, which is, I don't want it to taste super thin and super just like, oh, that's a cup of water. I want it to taste integrated and complex as well.
And for our listeners,
salsa.
And for our listeners who are more familiar with wine, because we do have a lot of them from the way that all of this started, how would you recommend for someone who hasn't tried a mead before to kind of start taste testing and getting familiar with mead? Are there certain flavors they should start with as a basis, or are you kind of like just jump right in and try whatever piques your interest?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've learned over the last 10 years with customers coming into our tasting room is a lot of the wine buyers come in and say, oh, I don't like sweet wines. And they end up walking out with the sweetest meads I make, because what they're thinking about is they don't like sweet grape wines, right? So sweet grapes, think of jelly, right? What does that go with? Peanut butter. What does that really pair with? Not much more than that. So sweet wines are really, like a Sauterne or stuff. They have a really unique niche opportunity. But if you think about honey and people's perception of honey being sweet and what honey can pair with, whether it's cheese plates, apples, savory dishes, baklava, there's all sorts of things that provide flavor hooks that honey works on. So if, from a chef perspective, honey is this beautiful bridge element, because you can make spicy dishes with honey. You can make savory dishes, like I was saying. So the honey acts as a natural bridge And so if you look at some of the meads that we make, like Wild, which is our blueberry mead, nice and dry, our Embrace, which is a blackcurrant, or Temerity, which is a barrel-aged blackcurrant, all those flavors are really working with the acidity of the fruit combined with the honey and the lower sweetness level to provide that, I want to call it a bridge, if you will, for the wine drinker into the mead world. But like, it's, I mean, if your wine drinkers have drank like Tokai is way sweeter than several of the wines and meads that we make. I certainly love Tokai, and I love really good Sauternes and Cabernets, and there's something for everybody, I think. And part of how we've gotten to the distribution level that we have, like Total Wine and More nationwide, pretty much carries most of my meads. All the Trader Joe's up here in New Hampshire carry my ciders and my sessionable stuff. Market Basket's one of our biggest customers in New Hampshire. The New Hampshire State Liquor Stores, Cost Plus World Market nationwide, Whole Foods, Specs, Denny's,
Wegmans.
Bevmo, Wegmans. The reason we've made such inroads is we haven't tried to just make something so niche that nobody wants to try it. Everybody used to say, well, what's your target demographic? And I would say women, because I would show up at a homebrew club party with a bottle of my beer and a bottle of my mead. And when I opened a bottle of mead, every woman in the room was knocking somebody over to get to me. And I said, okay, there's a market here. And, my background was software engineering, right? So I'm a pretty shy individual. I'm used to typing in front of a keyboard and, solving my own world problems without trying to have to interact with everybody in the room. So it's I'd say you really can't go wrong. I mean, our ratings are really well established, and the fact that we win, every single time we enter is, I think, proof. It's, there are probably 2 or 3 meaderies in the world that can probably even make that claim. And there are not many of them. They're all usually pretty good friends. I'm good friends with several of the guys I'm thinking of, or people I'm thinking of right now. And it's not just guys that are women mead makers that are as phenomenal as men mead makers as well. But
I would suggest for somebody who's new to mead is to definitely try a variety, because just like wine and beer and cider, you don't just try, say, for example, an IPA and say, I don't like IPAs, right? I would definitely suggest, if you are doing a panel tasting, to go from dry to semi-sweet to sweet. It's hard for your palate to go back the other way. But try a variety and figure out what you think you like versus when you taste and your brain starts to comprehend the nuances of what you're actually tasting. Because we've proven that people will come in and they'll be like, I'm a dry wine drinker, don't give me anything sweet. And as they go through a tasting profile, they'll start off with the dry and they'll say, okay, I did not expect that, that's good. And as they go down, they'll leave with the sweetest one, because the brain learns and it develops. And so don't be stuck in your preconceived notions that all mead is sweet, because that's not true. And just allow your tasting experience to help you observe, experience, and learn what you actually like.
And the food pairings really, really change it up too, as well as the temperature of the serving of the mead. So the colder you make it, the less honey you might taste.
Mm-hmm.
But like our flame goes great with like a goat cheese salad. Blossom, which is an apple mead with a nice sharp cheddar, is pretty spectacular. Desire, it may sound like a crazy pairing, but with a nice savory roast leg of lamb, really comes in well too.
I could definitely see that. Now, obviously, yeah, doing like kind of a panel tasting would be a great way to do it. Is that something you guys offer in your tasting rooms, or at least, in normal times and stuff, where you can offer it, like a brewery might have flights or something where you can sample all
yes.
We are. We're currently flipping around a little bit as
We're
we go
hibernating at the
from
moment.
summer season to this winter and trying to work on our indoor safety protocols to make sure we can make all this work. But yeah, we're actively have a on-premise tasting room, and we do offer curbside and delivery service as well. And we're hopefully going to buy a new location where we can have a destination location for the winery and brewery and tasting room experiences and everything.
And for those who are further afield, obviously going through this whole COVID thing, we have offered, and we will probably be offering again, now that we're hibernating again, things like this, Zoom meetings, where people can get together and they can come to us and say, okay, we have a group of friends, we have a club, we have a podcast, outreach membership, where we can actually perhaps send a tasting panel to people. They can order it online, it gets sent to them, and then we could do Zoom meetings where we can actually have a live tasting and walk people through it. So yeah, we're trying to adapt to the new world.
Yeah, for an example, we've never had a spit bucket in our tasting room ever in the 10 years.
Never.
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 And another thing that you mentioned earlier too, when we were going through sort of the government regulations, is that you can have up to a pound of hops or something like that. Now, recently we actually tried our first hopped cider, or at least the first advertised one that you could really taste it from Stowe Cider. Is that something you guys do a lot? And how does the hops in the mead really affect the overall taste of it?
Yeah, I've kind of played around with it in my mind, but I haven't actually. So you got to think of it as, as like a software engineer. I think about the problem space almost three-dimensionally. So as I think about the flavor of hops and what really helps hops, get the utilization out, is the boil time. And we don't boil our mead or our honey, so that doesn't gonna work too well. I was reading about a new hop, I want to say Cairo, some sort of extract format that they're using now that gets you that hop flavor. And I was interested in maybe trying to buy one, but it's like $500 for like a 2-kilogram jug of this hop oil. And I don't know how much I would need, but that seems like a lot of money for some hop. And, I think IPAs, for example, or beers really have a really nice showcase for how the hops really work in this technique. So it's kind of like, why try to force something if it doesn't belong there? It's kind of like when I think about making a pumpkin mead, I'm like, well, pumpkin's mostly starch. Why would you want to do that? And, then it dawned on me, oh yeah, well, you got sweet pumpkins, so maybe there's a sugar pumpkin and maybe that has some effort that might work, but I still can't really see why you'd want to try to
We haven't gotten them there yet, but we do bridge that gap. For example, we've now launched Hidden Moon Brewing into our portfolio, where we've introduced braggots, which is beer made from honey. So we do an IPA with lemon drop hops, Columbus, and one other one. So that technically still fits in within our portfolio because we still have the honey element, but it's technically a beer.
Yeah,
and then we released a Russian Imperial Stout as well.
Yeah,
so that's how we bridge that.
We're doing a double IPA tomorrow as well.
Right.
So I like my beer. I had a growler somewhere. Might be a little dirty, but Hidden Moon Brewing. Yeah.
And now for the actual fermentation time, so how long does mead take to actually ferment, and the whole process from start to finish when it's in the bottle and ready to be drunk? Is there any, how much aging goes into it? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, well, it's infinite. So best times that we're looking at, it could be a month. Most of what we make are about 3 months start to finish. We do have some that are approaching 10 years now of aging. We are releasing Utopian X, so Utopian batch number 10, so that'll have been aged in oak for 10 years. That's not going to be a cheap bottle. And all the variations, as you can imagine. So bottle conditioning changes the flavor of the mead. The longer it sits in the bottle, you might actually see some protein or haze drop out of out of solution. That can happen over time. But we have some bottles that are now 8 years old, and it's still as crystal clear at the bottom as it was at the day we put it into the bottle. So it's really got to do with technique on how you make the particular mead and what you're trying to achieve. I don't particularly try to set out to age all my meads forever, but the oldest mead I've ever tried was 60 years old. And I started way late in life to try to hope I'm ever going to try one of my meads that are 60 years old. But I've got some that are 20 years old now. So yeah, 40 more years ain't going to make it. So maybe my kids will someday have a 60-year-old mead that I made.
So remember, honey is one of those few food groups that never goes bad. So they don't go bad as quickly as beer and wine. They have much longer extended shelf life, and all of our meads are gluten-free, and our ciders as well.
And how does that the aging and letting it really sit a long time really affect the taste? Like, what different tasting notes does that sort of bring out? And obviously, I'm sure it will depend on what you're
Have you ever tried a 200-year-old Madeira?
No.
Okay. So I like Madeira, and I think Madeira that I've had have all been really good. And I like cognac, and I like rum, and I like tequila, and I like a lot of other things. And I think, oh, okay, this one's pretty good. How much better can it actually be? And then if you go from like Louis XIII to Remy Martin or regular XO cognac, you're like, whoa, okay. There's a huge difference. Now, how do you quantify that? And how do you? It's like the difference between, you can get to a work of art, but then how do you define a masterpiece, right? So I don't really know how to even describe it. I know how to know it when I taste it, and when you start to smell. So I coined this term a few years back called art in a glass, right? Because you can see the art, right? You're approaching it, you can see it's beautiful, right? And then you can nose it, and you're like, oh my God, all the pieces are tying together. You might get floral notes from the honey, you might get whiffs from the alcohol, but there's no burn, there's no off aromas, and it's just all leading towards this one ultimate goal. And when you taste it, and all those elements continue to roll into one, that's when you know you've had it. So this 60-year-old mead I had, this gentleman's grandfather had made it, and he had brought it into the United States from Poland. So his grandfather had it in these carboys in the basement. And some of the Polish meads are some of the best meads I've ever had in my entire life. There are definitely styles of mead that are made in Poland that I could only dream of trying to replicate in my best possible case scenario. And I'm not that good at doing that. I am great at drinking them, and my friends in Poland, they know who I am, and they take care of me. But it's like the difference between, I don't know. It's like, it's at the tip of my tongue, and I just want to be able to tell you, but it's like, there are no words to encompass that delta. It seems so infinitely small, but so massively big to the perception of flavor.
Personally, for me, I think that meads that are aged are just like a fine bourbon or a cognac. They tend to be a little smoother. Because they, with the aging process, they've had more time to settle and intermingle. Maybe a sweet one, very sweet one, like the Kurtz bourbon that you tried, let's say 30 years from now, maybe not be as sweet as they age. I would say that for me personally would be the way that I would describe it.
And I saw on your site you have a small cooking with mead section. Do you guys use it a lot in your cooking, or is that just kind of like a once in a while ingredient?
You're a child.
Meads are actually great. So think of cooking with mead. Here's the difference between cooking with mead and cooking with a grape wine. When the alcohol dissipates with regular wine, the flavor doesn't. So that's the difference with cooking with mead. So they're actually great wines to cook with. Maybe a little pricey, but when you're doing that special dish and you want it to retain the flavor, When the alcohol cooks out, the flavor doesn't.
So
yeah, we cook a lot.
well, you can get some really good flavors because we're using, certified organic honey. We're using real fruit, so nothing here is doctored. So you can't make great product with garbage in. So it takes that quality level of effort to get there. I mean, I wish I could say I cook with it all the time, but I just don't. I do like it when I am cooking. Like I've made chili with my ghost pepper mead. You can. We're now, I've started trying to learn to teach myself how to make chocolate from the bean. So we use cacao nibs in the process of making some of the meads, and we've now re-roast the cacao nibs after we made the mead to make chocolate. And, those chocolates are available in my tasting room. So I wanted to be a chef when I was a kid. So I like the idea of how do you cook, how do you repurpose, how do you create something that adds to that experience.
And when you cook with meads, remember your base point of where you're starting off from. With a grape wine, the difference is with mead, the honey holds on to the flavors. So initially, the flavors of the fruit or the spice or the honey are going to be way more pronounced when you're cooking. So it's all just a benefit. They're not notes like grape wine.
Love that. So we're going to have to try that, Nick. We're going to have to include it in some recipes if you don't drink it all first.
Oh, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with drinking it and buying yourself.
I think that's probably what's going to end up happening.
And speaking of purchasing, so on your site, and this will be going live just at the beginning of December, so perfect time for gifting, and we're putting together a New England gift guide. So you have some awesome boxes of different, pre-boxed like flavors that people can pick up and give to family and friends, or just have them at their table or drink them on their own, or whatever they want to do with them. So we'll be including that in our gift guide. So everybody listening, check that out. And also, for everybody listening, you do ship to quite a few states. How else can everyone purchase either a case of mead or if they just want a couple bottles for themselves?
Yeah, so our online store, we do offer, like I said, curbside pickup right now at our meadery. All the local stores where you might shop, if you look and see one of the states that we distribute to, there's a really good chance you can buy our mead local to where you are and not have to pay all the shipping costs. But we do ship to, I think, almost 40 different states now. We export to Australia, Japan, Hong Kong, Canada. It's really amazing to me to see that my mead's for sale in Perth, Australia. And, nothing like it, to see people from around the globe value what I do and my whole team, what we all do, to really kind of bring a ancient style of beverage into the mainstream market.
And if your state allows mead to be shipped in, if it's one of the states that are on our website and your local store doesn't carry it, ask them to bring it in. We appreciate that. This is how we grow. And then you don't have to pay shipping costs.
Nothing beats that. Nobody wants to pay shipping costs.
Right.
That's great. And yeah, of course, congratulations on all your success. I mean, it's incredible to see it. And for everybody who wants to follow along with that success, to see all the other accolades that you bring in, because I know there'll be more of them, where can they find you on social media and follow along with your journeys?
Sure. So we're at moonlightmeadery.com, and we have a Moonlight Meadery Facebook page and Instagram page. We have a Hidden Moon Brewery Facebook page and Instagram page, and we just recently launched Over the Moon Farmstead. That's going to be our destination location, and that's a 100-acre farm that we're looking to build and grow on in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And we're going to have a bed and breakfast. So if you're into coming to visit beer, mead cider destination locations, we got you.
Definitely. We're excited to see all that play out. I'm excited to finish drinking these meads, buy more, and try cooking with them. For everyone listening and watching on YouTube, we'll have links in the description below to the website, to the social media, so it's easy for you to navigate to. And we thank you again so much for taking the time to talk to us. Cheers.
Thank you so much for having us.
Be sure to follow us on social at Uncorked Corner and on the blog at uncorkedcorner.com for a taste of more food and beverage content.
And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thanks for listening.